Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Hopefully, everybody's doing okay. Getting into the spring. Just to let you know, this next lesson is scheduled for May the 29th. Okay, so Memorial Day week. I'm sorry, 22nd. Well, I'm really getting ahead. I got to talk to my secretary. She gives me false information. So it's for May 22nd because the 29th is going to be a holiday. We're off. You know that if you consult your schedule. So the Georgia O'Keeffe was a little too short, not enough info. I can't stretch that to make it a good, at least hour lesson. So I've added another short one from the book, but even more contemporary and interesting about the William Johnson. So I put those two together, and this should be quite enjoyable. So again, not what I've said first, but for May the 22nd, Monday. All right, so let me proceed with my usual routine here. Share the screen, go to the material, hit the slideshow, and then hopefully start from the beginning. Get the school code up here in the class title, okay? School code HUM for Humanities 105. Title of the class, The Intimate Lives of the World's Most Famous Artists. Okay, now we can dig into this. Yeah. Step by step. Week 8, I didn't mention that. Okay. And there's a picture of Georgia O'Keeffe in her younger days. I wouldn't say young, but maybe 40s. She looked to be quite an advanced age. So this is a picture of her. Okay, so now let's do a little background because even myself, I didn't know too much about her. So before we get into actually how she lived her life, we do a little background. So Georgia Toto O'Keeffe, born November 15th, 1887, and died March 6th, 1986. So you can see that. Ooh, could that possibly be 99 years? Was an American modernist artist. She was known for her paintings of enlarged flowers, giant flowers, New York skyscrapers, and New Mexico landscapes, so deserts, mountains, cactus, if you haven't been out to New Mexico. And by the way, that's in the United States. Okay, that's not a part of Mexico. It's what, near Texas? Yeah. O'Keeffe has been called the mother of American modernism. So that shows you how famous she was. In 1905, O'Keeffe began art training at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and then the Art Students League of New York. In 1908, unable to fund the Ford further education, she worked for 2 years as a commercial illustrator and then taught in Virginia, Texas, and South Carolina between 1911 and 1918. If someone has turned on some music somewhere, I'm going to go tell them to turn it off or I'm going to call the police. Hold a second. Okay, that's taken care of. Yeah, so after the 1911 and 1918, she studied art in the summers between 1912 and 1914, which is right before the start of World War I, probably a much freer and open time, but not when World War I started. And there, during those 2 years, she was introduced to the principles and philosophies of Arthur Wesley Dow. And he who created works of art based upon personal style, design, and interpretation of subjects, rather than trying to copy or represent them. Okay, so interesting take there. Instead of just, well, I'm going to have to do this traditional painting the way it was done. I'm going to have to mimic it, copy it somehow. He's like, no, I'm going to add my style to it, you know. And so that's why it's part of the modern movement, because everything before was considered traditional, classical, right? This caused a major change in the way she felt about and approached art, as seen in the beginning stages of her watercolors from her studies at the University of Virginia, and more dramatically in the charcoal drawings that she produced in 1915 that led to total abstraction. So if you're not familiar with the term abstraction, it means just completely a different kind of representation, completely. Maybe, again, not painting an apple as an apple, but an apple as a balloon, abstraction. Alfred Stieglitz, an art dealer and photographer, held an exhibit of her works in 1917. So probably at the end of World War I, because that's when it ended. Over the next couple of years, she taught and continued her studies at the Teachers College, Columbia University. Very prestigious university. It's interesting how she studied art in these different states and cities. Really interesting lifestyle, especially for a woman at that time. Very rare. She moved to New York, excuse me, in 1918 at Stieglitz's request and began working seriously as an artist. They developed a professional and personal relationship. Oh dear. That means they started dating. Oh. And that led to their marriage in 1904. Nice. O'Keeffe created many forms of abstract art, including close-ups of flowers, such as the red Hannah paintings, that many found to represent vulvas. I won't completely explain that. I'll tell you that a woman has one, and you can look that up in your dictionary. It's not a anatomy class. Okay. Though O'Keeffe consistently denied that intention. A lot of artists will do that just to keep mystery. So let's say that is what she was trying to represent. Remember my example of an apple painted as a balloon. Is that really an apple? It looks like a balloon. Oh no. So in this case, maybe it's true. That's what it was supposed to represent, or maybe she's telling the truth. But artists love mystery. The imputation of the depiction of woman's sexuality was fueled by explicit and sensuous photographs of O'Keeffe that Stieglitz had taken and exhibited. So you have to understand. I'll try to make this as simple as possible. So, explicit means, very sexual and sensuous. So there was no Playboy magazine. at this time. And even though, let's say, when I was a kid, Playboy magazine was the only, I guess, magazine that uh, showed women that were naked, and usually they just showed basically the top. Um, Now, of course, there's all kinds of magazines like that, internet, you name it. But at that time, this was not accepted by society. They did not want to see things. But again, he's starting the modernist movement with her. So, so again, that makes you think, well, if you want to say that these up close flowers, you're not trying to represent them in abstraction as vulvas. No, 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 you constantly fight that. Then why are you also accompanying it with sexual pictures of yourself? So again, there's a mystery. O'Keeffe and Stieglitz lived together in New York until 1929, when O'Keeffe began spending part of the year in the Southwest, which served as inspiration for her paintings of New Mexico landscapes and images of animal skulls, such as cow's skull red, white, blue, and ram's head white, hollyhock, and little hills. After Stieglitz's death, she lived in New Mexico at Georgia O'Keeffe's home studio in Abigui until the last years of her life, when she lived in Santa Fe. I don't know if at that time it was or she started it, but Santa Fe in New Mexico for many years now has been known as a artist's colony, neighborhood. A lot of artists go there to live and do their art. So I don't know if she was the trailblazer or it actually existed even at that time in some small way. But many times you'll mention some Santa Fe to some American person and they'll say, oh, that's where all those artist people live. In 2014, O'Keeffe's 1932 painting, Jimson Weed / White Flower #1, sold for, oh dear, $44,405,000. If I could sell a painting for that amount of money, oh my God, I don't know what I would do. Travel the world. Okay. And that's more than 3 times the previous world auction record for any female artist. So she is the top for the most expensive painting done by a female artist. After her death, the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum was established in Santa Fe. I have a feeling she was the initiator or trailblazer for making Santa Fe just call it. People probably followed in her footsteps. Okay. So this is a drawing of her. So remember her paintings of the skulls, right? The cow skulls. And she's dressed with a Spanish hat and cape, depicting New Mexico. She's got like an indigenous Indian style belt. There are her paintings of the up close flowers. You make your own decision what that looks like. It's just a flower. Gonna learn about this little doggy. Here is a snake. All right, what is the snake doing in there? We shall, excuse me, down. Okay, so here we go. Skulls and flowers. George O'Keeffe, born in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, 1887, died in Santa Fe, New Mexico, 1986. So again, to me, that looks like 99 years. Wow, that's a long time. Prominent American painter known for images of flowers, desert, scene. She said, I am going to be an artist, or yelled. Georgia O'Keeffe told a friend at age 12. Well, at age 12, she already knew what she wanted to be. And as I've seen famous people interviewed over the years, usually the people that got famous, they knew at an early age what they wanted to be. I mean, you know the actor Jack Black, right? I just saw him interviewed and he said he knew at 12 that he wanted to be an actor, even though the parents were like, you should go to school and high school and get a regular job. You're not the classic handsome looking guy, but look at the success he's had in life, right? So I have found out that most of these people, whether it's music or acting, you name it, they know at a very early age. So did Georgia O'Keeffe. She reached her goal by way of teaching art in Amarillo, Texas, and other places in the Wild West. When she wasn't drawing, she coped, which means uh, things you had to deal with, handle. So she coped with shootouts and different people shooting guns at each other, trying to kill each other, tornadoes, prairie fires, and families that clubbed wild rabbits to death for sport. So yes, imagine they have like a baseball bat and they chase wild rabbits and smash their skulls in with a baseball bat. That was their sport. So she had to put up with that. Not something that I would like to see, or especially not do, couldn't harm a helpless little animal like that. She seemed to fear nothing, though she once admitted, I'm frightened all the time, but I've never let that stop me. And I think that is a great self motto. Too many people now say, well, I won't do that because I'm scared or I don't like it. And then, of course, they think that people who do whatever they do, defend themselves or fight injustice, they say, well, they're not scared. They're brave. And then you'll find out they'll say, well, I'm afraid just like you, but I don't let it stop me. I still have to do something. I think if more people would learn that, especially young people, we'd be better off. You know? Okay. Against O'Keeffe's wishes, a friend in New York showed her work to photographer Alfred Stieglitz. So she did not want her art to be shown to photographer Alfred Stieglitz, but her friend said, I'm going to do it anyway. The central figure in introducing Stieglitz, that is, modern artists in the United States. Despite their many differences, they were married 8 years later. So she had a lot of differences from him, but somehow they got married to each other. So it's like what they say, you know, differences attract. Despite okay, so he was a city person who craved an audience, so he needed people to watch him. She was a country person who found people difficult. She wanted children, but he felt they would diverge or take time away from her painting, and that at 23 years her senior, he was too old. And that happens too with a lot of couples with a big age gap like that. And let's say the older fellow, he's just like, no, I had my kids before. I don't want to go through it again, or I'm too old. And the younger woman wants to have kids. It's a struggle. Mutual respect united them. He loved her art. He said, at last, a woman on paper. which guess I mean is because women were not popular as artists at the time. Suddenly there's this new gal who's an artist, and he's like, finally, a woman, not a man. And she took pleasure in the more than 300 photographs he took of her, though they created a scandal in some circles. Remember, they were very sensuous, to say the least. Don't forget the word explicit, especially for that time. They lived 30 stories up on the highest floor of a skyscraper called the Shelton, where they had no curtains to conceal their Manhattan panorama. A solemn, which means like quiet, reserved couple, they were dressed in look-alike black capes. In the drawing of her, she's wearing a black cape. They often ate at Joe's Spaghetti Restaurant or the Far East Tea Garden. Dignified and direct, O'Keeffe almost always wore black. So you see in the drawing of her, she's wearing all black. O'Keeffe eventually began to spend summers alone in New Mexico, which she adored for its remoteness and scenery. Remoteness means far away from the city, right? It's very remote. Remember the landscapes, deserts, cactus, mountains. After Stieglitz died, she moved there permanently at age 59 and bought Rancho de los Burros, not burrito, a U-shaped adobe house overlooking dramatic cliffs. Adobe houses are the traditional houses of New Mexico made of frame. When she wasn't painting, she was often rafting on the Colorado River, attending local Indian ceremony, killing rattlesnakes. That's why there was a snake. She chopped off their heads with a hoe. A hoe is something you dig in the yard for agricultural planting. So again, she was afraid, but didn't let it stop her. So she's going to kill these rattlesnakes now with a gun, not shooting it, but with a hoe. Taking moonlight horseback rides and lying on her roof in a sleeping bag to savor the view. Very interesting. She's way out there remotely, gets on top of her house on the roof, puts a sleeping bag and sleeps, as they say, under the stars. Uh, when she couldn't sleep, she would scrub floors, bake bread, or read cookbooks. So many different people have different ways of doing something when they can't sleep to bide the time until they can fall asleep. She ate homemade yogurt and fried bananas and was especially fond, which means she liked a lot, garlic, raw onions, and hot chilies. So she might not have been the best person to give a kiss to because she's got smelly garlic, raw onions, and hot chilies. That'd be a spicy, strong taste. You have to be a strong man to kiss that woman. Visitors thought they had never seen anyone happier with life, but local townspeople were suspicious of her. And she would say, "Nobody calls me girly." O'Keeffe said of one neighbor who made that mistake. So I guess one fellow said, "Hi, girly." That made her. I don't know why. She thought she was a witch, or I'm sorry, some thought she was a witch. Oh, remember dressing all in black, living remotely. They speculated or guessed about the rich outsider, all in black, never smiling, with ferocious chow dogs. So that's why we saw the dog in the painting, Chinese chow dogs. Their names were Bobo and Chia. And also, not to mention, hold on, here's a nice skull. Go to the top of her adobe house and sleep on the roof. So not to mention all those skulls she collected on her hikes. So not only did she paint it, but she collected them. That's why I guess there were so many on the brim of her hat drawing. Cowboys warned strangers to steer clear, I mean, stay away from O'Keeffe's property, adding that she had a shotgun. Maybe they saw her shoot it before. But many locals appreciated her financial help in the community, supporting such causes as Little League teams, a new recreation center, and a new elementary school. So she wanted to be left alone, didn't like dealing with a lot of people, but she had no problem donating money for children's Little League baseball teams, a recreation center for the community, and a new elementary school for the kids. Very interesting dichotomy there between the two parts of her personality. During the last 13 years of her life, O'Keeffe's companion was Juan Hamilton, a man in his late 20s. So if she lived until 99, that means well, that's 13. She was 86 and he was in his 20s. Who worked for her full time. She began to wear colors in public, so no more all black. Turquoise, dark green, maroon. Neighbors spread rumors that the pair was secretly married. Uh-oh, scandal. But the gossip only amused or made O'Keeffe laugh. She died peacefully of complications of old age at 98. So I guess she almost made it to 99. Didn't quite make her birthday. So complications of old age is just kind of like saying her body just wore out. There was no cancer, no heart attack. The body just said, we're almost 99 years old. We're tired. And if you look at the body like a machine, it just decided like it's time to stop working, right? The next day, her ashes were scattered. So, I mean, she was cremated or burned over the desert landscape. Her will left the ranch and many paintings to Juan. So, will should have been capitalized, but that's when you make that paper like a contract and it says, I have $1 million. When I die, I want you to give it to my cat, Yo-Yo, but, or my husband or my daughter. So she left it to her companion. And she called him my friend. And again, mystery. Who knows? People thought she was secretly married. Uh, Maybe there was more, but she says, my friend. Okay, back to some artworks. O'Keeffe painted hundreds of flowers in every shape, color, and size. To her, flowers were a respite or rest from city life. When a series of paintings of calla lilies, another form of flower, sold for the highest sum ever paid to a living American artist, it gave her lifetime financial security. She was so dazed, she fled to Maine for a month. See, so she won this big amount of money for the painting, and she didn't even know what to do, why she went to Maine. I don't know, and she stayed there for a month. I don't know. I guess it's like a lot of guys that win the lotto now, they just disappear to Vegas. Fortunately, gamble some more, but they go over there and enjoy themselves. Cow's skull, red, white, and blue, featured another of O'Keeffe's main subjects, bleached animal bones. So that means you painted them white. She thought of bones as lively, not connected with death. That's why it didn't bother her. if you connect those with death, then, it's going to bother you. In Horse's Skull with Pink Rose, she combined flowers and bones. One day she hastily, which means hurriedly, stuck a fabric flower in a skull's eye socket on her way to answer the door, and later liked the effect enough to recreate it on canvas. Canvas. So again, when you get these artistic folks, many times they create something by accident. Somebody doorbell, she's got the flower in her hand. There's no vase, so she just puts it in the eye socket of the skull of the cow. And later she comes back and looks at it, has an idea, and paints it, and becomes richly successful. Accidents from their creativity. Summer Days was one of her favorites, and the painting she used for the cover of a book about her work. When a museum hesitated or waited at the $400,000 price she asked, she sold the painting to designer Calvin Klein for $1 million. So look at that. She asked $400,000, which is not even $500,000. 500,000 would be $500,000, so it's 100,000 left. And they're like, nah, we're not sure. So bingo, she asked the famous designer Calvin Klein, and he bought it for $1 million like that. Wow. Unbelievable. Again, another lucky strike. Like me in my life, it's usually the opposite. I hesitate and then I lose. So they hesitated and then someone just, more than double the price. Good for her. Okay. All right, now we're off into the next one, William Johnson. So you see the middle name here. William Henry Johnson, more contemporary, right? March 18th was born, 1901. And April 13th, 1970, he died. So that looks like 69 years, not 99. And he was an American painter. Born in Florence, South Carolina, he became a student at the National Academy of Design in New York City, working with Charles Webster Hawthorne. He later lived and worked in France, where he was exposed to modernism. Like we said before, the modernist movement. After Johnson married Danish textile artist Holchak Krake, or Krake, the couple lived for some time in Scandinavia. There he was influenced by the strong folk art tradition. The couple moved to the United States in 1938. Johnson eventually found work as a teacher at the Harlem Community Art Center through the Federal Art Project. If you didn't know, at that time, Harlem was a primarily Black neighborhood, quite successful at the time. Johnson's style evolved from realism to expressionism. Again, expression, feelings on things, change it. To a powerful folk style or country style, for which he is best known. A substantial collection of his paintings, watercolors, and prints is held by the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which has organized and circulated major exhibitions of his works. His education. William Henry Johnson was born March 18, 1901 in Florence, South Carolina, to Henry Johnson and Alice Smoot. He attended the first public school in Florence, the all-black Wilson School on Athens Street. It's likely that Johnson was introduced to sketching by one of his teachers, Louise Fordham Holmes, who sometimes included art in her curriculum. Johnson practiced drawing by copying the comic strips in the newspapers and consider a career as a newspaper cartoonist. Right? Just his little hobby as a little boy practicing helped develop his art and could have given him a career if he didn't go fully into art. He moved from Florence, South Carolina to New York City at the age of 17, working a variety of jobs. He saved enough money to pay for classes at the prestigious or famous National Academy of Design. He took a preparatory class with Charles Lewis Hinton, then studied with Charles Courtney Curran, George Willoughby Maynard, all of whom emphasized classical portraiture and figure drawing. Beginning in 1923, Johnson worked with the painter Charles Webster Hawthorne, who emphasized the importance of color in painting. John studied with Hawthorne at the Cape Cod School of Art in Provincetown, Massachusetts during the summers, paying for his tuition, food, and lodging by working as a general handyman at the school. Johnson received a number of awards at the National Academy of Design, applied for a coveted, many people wanted it, Pulitzer Travel Scholarship in his final year. When another student was given the award, Hawthorne raised nearly $1,000 to enable Johnson to go abroad. Okay. All right, so there's a drawing of him. See, riding a bicycle, smoking a pipe, traveling the roads between the country and the big cities. Traveled a lot. There's this paintbrushes. Picture of someone, lady. Some paintings here that he carried with him. So here we go. Handstands on the beach. That's when you put two hands on the ground and kick your legs up in the air and hold the position. That is a handstand. William H. Johnson, born in Florence, South Carolina, 1901, died in Long Island, New York, 1970. Modern American artist, most famous for highly original treatments of subject from African American life. In the artistic realm, William H. Johnson once said, race ultimately isn't very important. So what he's trying to say is that with artists and the ability to do art at high level, race is not an issue. You know, it's not like, well, only, Italians can paint, only Chinese people can paint. It's like, no, everybody can paint. It doesn't matter the race, that's what's not important. Part African American, part white, and part Sioux Indian. Johnson had found that race was all important in the small, strictly segregated town where he grew up. So for the people in the small town at that time, race was very, very important. With his uncle's help, he saved enough money from the odd jobs at the YMCA and the railroad station to get himself out of South Carolina to art school in New York, 17. So yes, he was in South Carolina. So that is the South, and at that time, they still had, as they say, segregated restrooms. One restroom for Black people, which was painted with the word colored. The other one for whites. money from scholarships and work as a short order cook. So like working the grill at Denny's. And hotel porter got him even farther to Paris. So he saved money from his job to fly to Paris. After this, Johnson mostly lived abroad, overseas, where he felt there was more acceptance of blacks. So he felt, let's say, in many countries in Europe, more people there accepted him, because I guess he predominantly looked like a black man. Whereas in his small town in South Carolina, I guess he had trouble. A lot of folks there didn't quite like black people there. And for the sake of his career, even his teachers encouraged him to stay there. So his teachers, I guess, back in South Carolina said, don't come back here. This place hasn't changed yet. Stay over there in Europe, it's better for you. So it's nice of his teachers to encourage him. Marriage to Holka Krake, a Danish weaver and textile expert who was 16 years older than him. So again, we have this theme of a younger and older couple as artists. This kept Johnson based in Denmark. Despite their different ages and backgrounds, they were devoted to each other. She encouraged his work, arranged joint exhibitions of her weaving and his paintings, and supported them with her sales. Johnson was a familiar sight around the fishing village of Kurtemin, with his portable easel balanced on his head. Again, that's that roundish piece of wood that they have different spots of paint that you dip your paintbrush in and paint with. So that was balanced on his head. He had rolled up canvases so he could paint on them under his arm, and a pipe in his mouth, so he did like to smoke, just like the picture. He wore the same blue shirts Danish workers did, with the wide cotton pants, strong sandals, and a bandana around his neck. He attracted audiences that appreciated the graceful and rhythmic way he danced while he painted. So he had a graceful and rhythmic way he was dancing while he painted. He did not stand still. And this attracted audiences. When he was not working, he jogged and did handstands on the beach, helped fishermen bring in the day's catch, whatever they caught for the day. Though extreme seasickness kept him off the boat, so he did suffer from seasickness. I'm pretty good. I don't have a weak stomach for seasickness, but if the boat gets too busy, I can't start feeling it. It's not a good feeling. And then he played geography guessing games with local kids. On rainy days, he took outdoor showers by wrapping a towel around himself, stepping outside. So that means he'd step outside with a towel, and then it starts raining, so he take off his towel, and he was naked. I guess he had soap. Took a shower outside. He and Holcha traveled as much as they could, backpacking and bicycling throughout Europe and North Africa. You see in the picture there, that's why he had a bicycle, right? And a backpack. I just thought it was for carrying his canvases, but he was a travel on the road kind of junkie guy. This is him doing a handstand. This is well over here when he helped the fishermen. Johnson could sometimes seem mysterious. Brooding is kind of, you sit there and you have like a angry look on your face, and it looks like you're boiling like a pot of rice, steaming rice. Unusually reserved and solemn. Solemn can be very quiet and solemn. Fellow artist and friend Romare Bearden described him as rather serious. He was known to lose his temper at times, especially if anyone messed up his clean and orderly studio. A lot of artists I've seen, they do not have a clean and orderly studio. So I guess he took great pain to make sure his was. So if you walked in there and then messed it up a little bit, he got pissed off. Once when he was hit by a stray snowball, so that means people are throwing snowballs all the way. Nobody directly at him, but it just went the wrong way, like when you hit a golf ball. You try to go right with the golf ball and it goes left. He got hit by a stray snowball. He chased the Danish boy who threw it all the way into his classroom and demanded an apology. He was not an easy person to get along with. He could silence people with a look, and for the most part, he liked to keep to himself. So again, a person that didn't get along with a lot of different people and preferred to be alone, just like Miss Georgia O'Keeffe as she got older. After his beloved Holsha died of breast cancer, which is a terrible blow, Johnson talked of nothing else but her. That's where his concentration was. He grew moodier, and to be moody is when you change. Monday you're happy, Tuesday you're angry, Wednesday you're sad, Thursday you're confused. So he grew moodier, more irritable, which means he would get angry very easily. We get the word irritated. And his anxious friends noticed emotionally disturbed. So he was not keeping his emotions in check. He began living on the street, even though always careful with money. He had enough saved up to stay in hotels. Uh, that reminds me of when I was a kid, even middle school and high school. We we did not use the term homeless because we really didn't have people that lived on the streets. They usually tried to stay hidden at that time, so that's where they started the thing of living off the side of a freeway instead of now where they just put a tent on the underpass or they take over a bus stop or just any street in public. And see how it says that he would be arrested because he used to be able to be arrested for that. You can't start living on a bus stop, right? People have to take the bus stop, all the tax-paying citizens, and then he would go to jail, and then he have a lot of money in his pocket and just pay and get out. Not like a true homeless person that didn't have any money. But what I was trying to say, well, when I was younger, some of these fellows would die. Like you would see a guy on the side of some old guy on the side of a freeway, and he's like, "Hey, I need money," and people would throw him money and drive on. Like my father. And later, when they would die, they would have to ID him. He had a wallet, and they found out the guy for this time is a lot of money. The guy had like $300,000 in his bank account. You know, when houses you could buy a house for 50,000. You have 300,000, you could buy a house for 50,000. You could buy a car for brand new car for 5,000. It's just crazy, right? But same kind of thing, mentally not there, just prefer to live on the street. Less than 3 years after Holcha's death, Johnson was diagnosed with disabling brain damage from syphilis. Syphilis is a sexually transmitted disease, and for some terrible reason, if you don't get it treated with the correct medicine, it is like an infection and will go to your brain and affect your brain, and you can die from it too. Makes people go crazy. So he was sent to live in a mental hospital in New York. Unlike Van Gogh, we read about earlier, Johnson was unable to paint while he was hospitalized and was shocked when people suggested it. So when people said, "Hey, you pass your time here in the mental hospital, you should start painting," and he was like almost angry, like, "How dare you ask me to paint right now? I can't do it." He never painted again. Sad. 23 years later, at the age of 69, he died of pancreatitis, a pancreas cancer. That year, his work was included in several exhibitions in the United States, and his reputation has grown ever since. And again, like many, many artists, their fame comes posthumously, meaning after their death, then not before, where they struggle. We'll get into his artworks. Interested in all aspects of Blacks in history, Johnson depicted or showed quiet rural scenes, as in Going to Church, perhaps his most famous work, as well as energetic street life, as in Cafe and Street Musicians, and events like the 1943 Harlem riots and the daily lives of Blacks fighting in segregated World War II units. Sometimes he signaled his work Malinda, a more African-sounding name. So again, with the mystery, he signs it as Melinda, and people say, "Who is this Melinda? Is this an African name?" So popular technique for artists. Johnson got just enough public recognition to keep him going. So he didn't get super rich like Georgia, but just enough to run around and not have a job and do what he needed to do. Chain Gang, it's a painting of his, for example, was exhibited at the New York World's Fair of 1940. But during his life, European art was all the rage, that's what was popular, not American. By the time collectors were noticing American artists, most of Johnson's work was stored in a warehouse. A little late, right? Like again, most artists. 1955, his paintings narrowly escaped destruction when his savings, which were paying for the storage fees, ran out. So it doesn't matter if you say, well, I paid my storage fee for the last 10 years and I have no money. By the way, those are my life savings to keep me going. We don't care. You can't continue to pay. We're going to take those paintings. All right, so we're done with the readings. Now let's get on to the questions. Georgia O'Keeffe's up first. 1. What did Georgia tell a friend at age 12? Did she say, let's go to the movies, let's go shopping, or I like that boy standing across the street? What did she say? 2, what did Georgia once admit? That she had robbed a bank? Or she ate an illegal chili pepper? What did she once admit? 3, what did Georgia adore New Mexico for? Right? New Mexico's famous for their green patch chili. So is that what she adored them for? Gotta love them chilies. Or maybe she loves snakes. I think the article said a little about her love for snakes. 4, why did many New Mexico locals appreciate her? Interesting. She lived by herself. She didn't like people to bother her. People were afraid of her. She had a shotgun. Is that why they appreciated her? 5, during the last 13 years of her life, how did Georgia dress? So she dressed one way for most of her life. And the last 13 years, she had a completely different style. So was she wearing American clothes for most of her life? And then the last 13 years, she wore a hanbok? Oh no. How did she change? Okay, you ready for William's questions? Okay. William H. Johnson. 6, what did William H. Johnson say about the artistic realm? Did he say it was beautiful? Did he say it was multicolored? Did he say only the highest level painters can reach that level? What did he say? 7. Why did William mostly live abroad? Why? His hometown was not good enough for him, or New York City wasn't good enough for him? Why living abroad? In my time when I was a kid, people wouldn't like it if you lived abroad. They'd say, like even countries like Spain, it's like, well, they didn't have hot running water, or they didn't have this or that. So it made a lot of sense. But now it's a switch because, like, I remember my friends as kids, like the boy got a broken arm. And let's say on Friday, he was back on Monday with a cast. Nobody talked about they didn't have enough money to pay for the cast. But now I'd imagine kids getting a broken arm or leg, it costs thousands of dollars, which is really, really a sad situation. And other countries probably have better medical rates. So it's kind of the opposite now. People might ask you, why are you staying in LA, right? 8, why did he attract people while he painted? Why? Did he have a band play? And then people said, oh, I want to hear the music and watch this guy paint. Or did he do it like a magician and paint on top of the World Trade Center? What is it that he did, or what have you, that made people want to watch him paint? 9, how did William sometimes seem and why? So they're talking about his personality. How did he look out? How was his personality sometimes that people felt he was? Okay. Did they think he was very happy all the time? He couldn't stop whistling or singing a song? Who knows? And why did he not, and again I say not, have to live on the streets? He was living on the streets. He didn't really have to. Your answer to this question is you have to tell me why not. All right, so like I said, that's the end of both readings. We just finished the question. I think we're done for the day. Stop share. All right, so again, this lesson is for May the 22nd. The next week we should have a holiday for the Memorial Day weekend, so you probably won't get an assignment. You can take a rest. And then we'll have week 9 and then the final after. Okay? So everybody take care. I hope you enjoyed that. It was fun today for me. So I will see you at a later date. Bye-bye.